Okay, my name's Bobby Schrieber. I'm a native of Ocean Springs. I guess one of the few you'll ever see nowadays, but I've been here all my life, 84 years, and happy to be here. My family on my dad's side arrived here in the 1800s, and my mom's family probably about the same time. I know a little bit more about my dad's family because we talked about it a lot when I was growing up. Ocean Springs was beautiful. You could go anywhere you wanted to. You didn't have to worry about getting run over or any. I mean, it was just a beautiful place. You could walk all over town. You could use your bicycle. But I spent a lot of time hanging around the harbor and around the beach.
Did you fish?
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of fish do you like to catch?
Well, we didn't catch anything that you could put on the wall as a trophy, but we fished almost all the time for things like white trout and croakers and things like that. Yeah.
What were the fishing poles like when you were a kid?
Sometimes we didn't even have a fishing pole. We'd use a piece of string with a hook tied on it, you know. Growing up, wow. Well, I lived in a neighborhood in those days where I lived on Ward Avenue. There was about 10 other boys my age, and I could start naming them all the way down the block. Frankie Seymour, Bobby Dean O'Neill, Charlie Vavadich, Charlie Noel.
What would you boys do for fun?
Throw things at each other, mainly. Well, I don't know. I mean, we were just a bunch of roughneck kids is all, you know. Everybody was in those days, but we didn't. We all got along, but you know, there were things we would do that would get on the other one's nerves. Yeah. I went to school at Ocean Springs, all 12 years in the same building, which is now the Mary C. O'Keefe Cultural Center.
Do you remember any of your teachers?
Yes, ma'am. I remember all of them. Well, in in the first grade, we had a teacher named Miss Clark, and she was a young girl. Miss Anderson, there were two first grades that year. Miss Anderson had half of the class, and Miss Clark had the second year was Miss Gamble, and she was really great. And then we had Miss Josephine Hunter, and then we had Miss Loper. And then after that, we were kind of split up where we had more than one teacher in a day, you know. But up until that point, one teacher had us all day long. And, you know, about that time was when Coach Glass and Coach Boyd came, which we admired both of those guys. You know, I still do up until today. Well, I was really interested in geometry. And because of that, I used to make straight A's in geometry. I was really proud of it. And I also liked spelling when I was a little kid because I could do it. Anything you can do something good, you're going to like it, you know. And if you like something, you'll do it better, too. But,
What year did you graduate?
1958.
Okay, and what did you do after high school?
Well, I went to work as a carpenter. In those days, the carpenters had an apprenticeship program. Times weren't easy in the late 50s and 60s. If you could get a job, you were pretty lucky. I was one of the ones that I chose not to go to college. I wanted to go to work because I'd always had jobs when I was in high school, you know, and it was in my thought process. You're going to go to work full time when you can. I didn't play any sports. Of course, we played in a schoolyard, but by the time I was old enough to play high school sports, I was already going to work. I got my paper route when I was a young kid, and when I started getting a little bit restless with that, I went to work in a grocery store.
Very neat. So what was your paper route?
all over Ocean Springs, basically. I had 150 customers, and started right up by the old L&N Depot and went all the way down to where the yacht club is now. I was about 14, and Mr. Maxwell, I never will forget, he was a good guy. He helped me get my first Social Security card. In those days, you weren't born with Social Security. You had to apply for it. And he helped me. He filled out the paperwork, and I signed it. He knew how to handle it all. Well, several buddies of mine, one boy's name was Eugene Bowman, and another boy's name was Benny McMurtry. And Mr. Jack Beausarge was, he was older than us, but he was a butcher. Almost every, not more than 2 or 3 blocks, you would have a store and a bar. And the reason for that was when we were in high school, not everybody had a car, and people would walk to the store. And it was a whole lot easier for people to get their groceries in those days. Nowadays, for instance, if you had to go out to Walmart and didn't have a car, you'd be in a heap of trouble. But in those days, not everybody had a car. Think about this, Nancy. You can remember there might have been 4 or 5 kids in high school with us that owned cars. In the school bus, carried the kids from Fontainebleau and Van Cleve, but that was, there was only 2 school buses. But okay, the grocery store, starting on Washington Avenue, you had Van Cleve's Grocery. It was where the health food store is now. And then going down, you had Eglin's Grocery, Mr. Don Eglin. Then you had Goche's. Okay, then coming down Government Street, you had Mr. Fortich had a store, Pee Wee Steelman had a store. Coming down another block, on the other side was a store called Black and White Food Store. It belonged to the Viator family. Go on down about 3 more blocks, Mr. Mallet had a store. Okay, then over on Calhoun Street right here, Mr. Catchot had a store. The building's still there, and his son still lives in the house right next door. On the corner of Porter Avenue and Magnolia Street, there was a little neighborhood store right there. I chose to be a carpenter and a builder. Well, when I was in my 20s, I had an opportunity. I was building some houses, but they were, generally speaking, fairly small. But I had an opportunity to build a really nice big house for a guy named Tommy Morton. Tommy really gave me an opportunity to make a jump from being an average old boy that was building houses to being one that was, people would seek you out. And after I finished with Tommy's house, it was one pretty good job behind another until I decided I wanted to retire. Well, Washington Avenue was the center of Ocean Springs. It was the business center. There were a few businesses down Government Street, like Henrietta's Cafe and Mr. Fortich's store, but up on Government Street, one of my favorite places was Tony Canale's shoe store.
That was in Washington, or
yeah, Washington. He was where now there's a restaurant called Harriet Perry's son has it. What's the name of that?
Vestige.
Vestige. Yeah, that's where Tony used to be, and he could fix your shoes. Back in those days, people didn't buy athletic shoes. They bought leather shoes, and the soles were actually leather. Well, Mr. Tony could put new heels on them and new half soles on them. And of course, all the grocery stores, straight across the road from Mr. Tony was an old general store. They didn't sell any food, but they sold everything else. Mr. McFarland. and they lived upstairs. Do you remember Mr. McFarland and
I
his?
remember Mr. McPherson.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
a,
yeah.
there was a
Chet,
mercantile.
yeah, okay. He was right next door to Tony's Shoe Shop. That was M&M, a big store there, and it stayed open until I was like a senior in high school, and then it was torn down. Matter of fact, I worked with the guys that tore it down. There was a theater there, the Ellen Theater.
Did you ever go there?
Oh yeah, yeah. Everybody did because we didn't have television. You could go on Saturday and stay all day. You know.
What movies did you see there?
We saw mainly it was westerns like Roy Rogers, and you'd see Gene Autry and Tarzan, and then they'd have on Saturday you could see the Little Rascals and the Bowery Boys and some cartoons. But, yeah. Oh, it was dingy. It was just dark wood, and it had a slanted floor, and it had a screen half the size that you have in theaters now. But
What about the balcony?
upstairs was where the black people sat.
Situation.
They had a piano. It was actually one of those pianos that you could put piano rolls in. And when they tore the building down, a friend of mine got that piano and all of those paper rolls.
They still.
They had movies that were actually good movies. You know, the new movies. They would bring a truck would pull up every day and unload these canisters of film, and then pick up the ones that were from the day before. Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, I worked with them a lot of nights. And what happened to that thing? Those old projectors had a carbon fuse in them that had to be. You had to tend to it. You had to keep cranking it in so it would stay in contact to make that bright light. And if you didn't watch it, it'd burn out. Well, then you'd have to start all over. People would be screaming down below. Yeah, yeah. That guy's name was Red Elling that owned that theater.
I ask you, Bobby, who were some real influential people in your life growing up?
Duncan Moran and his dad, two of the best people I've ever known. They owned a lumber company in Ocean Springs, and of course I was always up there with my dad or one of his brothers. And I can remember if anybody needed material to do work on their house and they didn't have the money, Mr. Moran would charge it to them. And he'd never bother anybody about paying up. You know, of course, he always got his money, but he was just that kind of guy. And his son Duncan was a carbon copy of him. J.K. Lemon was always around Ocean Springs. He was an honest man and a good man and very successful. And we all knew him. A lot of families didn't have cars, and I can clearly remember if a man made $60 a week, he was making pretty good money when we were in high school. And when people started making $100 a week, it was almost like, golly, this is a lot of money. You know? But money went a lot farther then. Okay, the thing I miss about Ocean Springs is this. First off, I'm going to tell you, when I was a kid in Ocean Springs, if I went to Washington Avenue, I literally knew every business owner on the avenue. And all of them on Government Street too. And most of them lived on the premises. Most of those stores had a residence either upstairs or in back of the business. Nowadays, I don't think I would know one person that owned a business up there today. And I miss that. Okay, what caused it? Stores like Walmart put all the old timers out of business. And now Ocean Springs, and this is the thing that I'm not going to say I dislike it about Ocean Springs, but I'm not used to it yet. Ocean Springs has turned into a boutique community. You don't go uptown for any necessities whatsoever. You used to go to Washington Avenue for all of your necessities, or Government Street. Now you don't go up there for any of that. You go to Walmart or CVS Pharmacy, places like that. Mm-hmm. Government Street was Highway 90. The Highway 90 came into Ocean Springs from the east, and when you get to Washington, you had to turn left, and you'd go down to Porter Avenue, and then go to Biloxi from there. And there was probably 6 or 8 service stations. The other thing I remember about Ocean Springs that you don't see at all, we had about a half a dozen motor courts. And it wasn't like, well, one example would be if you'd go up to Dale's Cottages right now. Those cottages are still there. Well, those were like Motel 6 is today. And on Porter Avenue down by, before you get to the yacht club, there was some cottages right there just after you pass Sweets Lounge and all that. On the other side of the road, there was cottages, and it was a place where people could stay overnight.
That was Capers, right?
No, Capers was one too, but Capers was where that roost is now.
Yeah.
And there was another one on the corner of Washington and Porter. Now there's an apartment complex called Cedar Oaks Apartments there. Do you remember when there was a Gulf station on the corner, Mr. Hour? Hour?
I remember. Where was that?
It was right across from what's Knuckleheads right now. Knuckleheads used to be a Texaco.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then, okay, and going out Government Street, there was 3 or 4 other of those motor courts. One was right there where there's a little dental clinic now, a pediatric dental clinic. There used to be about a dozen cottages right in there. And then across the road on the corner of Beckley Boulevard, there was one there. So Ocean Springs was a good place for people to stop when they were going from Louisiana to Florida or vice versa. Well, you didn't put your own gas in your car. Somebody would come out and they would sweep the front of your car or your front seat out, and they'd wipe your windshield and they'd check your oil while they was putting gas in it. Okay, I think when I was growing up, there was no such thing as boredom for boys. There was always something to do. You could go down to the beach, you could go to the community pier, you could go to the harbor, you could hunt if you wanted to. In those days, when I was up until I was in high school, Magnolia Street was city limits. And you could do anything you wanted to except snow skiing.
So what changed, do you think? Why do kids get bored now?
You want the truth about it?
Yes.
I think kids today live for the telephone. I think that's over half of their life. I see it too.
And do you have a telephone?
I don't have one.
Why not?
I don't want one. I don't want my world reduced to 2 inches.
So how do people get a hold of you?
They'll find me if they need me. Listen,
Okay, Bobby, I want to go back to high school. People played a lot of pranks in high school, and they are hysterical. Bobby, you don't have to say anything you did, but just tell us about one of those pranks that you told me about before that were hysterical.
One of the things we did, you remember Miss Hampton? She used to teach. She was kind of a grouch. She was an old maid, but when I was a senior, we were tearing down that old M&M Supply Company. Well, in the back of the building, there was a great big, this thing was the size of a big Coke machine. It was a Kotex machine. And I knew that she kept score at the basketball games, and she would never be home. If there was a basketball game, she wouldn't be at her house. So we went and got that thing, put it in a driveway.
The incident I'm thinking about is the typing class.
Oh yeah.
You got another good story.
Well, Perry Goche was a neighbor of mine. Matter of fact, he lived right across the road from me while I was in high school. And I took typing when I was a senior simply because I had more credits than I already needed to graduate, but typing was one of them that I said, well, okay, maybe I could do that. But I can remember we were told, we had those old Underwood typewriters, and you could take the keys off and put them back on. And some of them had blank keyboards and some of them had letters on the keys. Well, I remember I was in there one day because we were free. If we had study hall, we could go down to the typing class and try to catch up on our lessons if we wanted to. So I went down and I was messing with my typewriter, and I noticed that the keys you could remove them. So I took my typewriter and I moved all the keys over one space. And I said, the next hour was when we were going to have typing class. So I said, I'm going to give this a try and see if I can do it to other typewriters. So I changed about 3 of them. And I remember Mr. Goche used to be, if he would see you look, you had to have your typing book and it would stand up like this. And if he would see you looking at the keyboard, he would jump on you. So Virginia Seymour was sitting right next to me and KK Shaw was sitting in front of her. And that was 2 of the typewriters that I had moved the keys. And I saw them, they started typing, and they looked at me. They're not supposed to look down at the keyboard. You're not supposed to do it. And if they hadn't been looking down at the keyboard, they wouldn't have done what happened to them. But they would type, and they would look at their paper, and there was nothing that made sense. Well, both of them broke down in tears. Well, Mr. Goche, he noticed something was going on. He walked back there. What's the matter, girls? He told me, this typewriter don't work right. Look. Well, as soon as he looked at the keyboard, he knew that it had been tampered with. But luckily, I had done mine too. So he looked at it. He walked up to the blackboard and he wrote, if I ever find out who did this. He took up the old blackboard with a threat. If I ever find out who did this, they'll never attend this school again.
What grade was that?
12.
Oh my word.
Yeah. I mean, if you made mistakes in class, somebody would paddle your backside. Wood paddles. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are some of your hobbies?
Today, I like to fish, and I used to play golf, but I got all my golf buddies are dead, so it's not interesting anymore to me. But I like to fish, and I just like visiting with my friends.
Going to the Y.
Yeah, going to the Y. That's every morning. Yeah, when I was a little bitty kid, we only had one policeman, and it was Mr. Williams. Malcolm's dad and Mr. Nub Williams. And after that came Wiley Broom, and I think he had one other policeman that would help him, but for a long time it was only one or two policemen on duty at a time. The community field was always full of kids, but one of the things I did when I was a kid was Mr. Woodrow Blossman built the first private swimming pool I've ever seen in Ocean Springs, and he used to get me the lifeguard for him at his house. And I could do it. He would set it up where I could do it and still have my paper out, and then after I went to work at the store, I could do that too. I've never lived permanently in another country, but I still have a place in Costa Rica that I bought about 40 years ago. uh, well, when I was in the JCs, that used to be a really nice organization when I was a young man. We had an exchange program with the JCs in Costa Rica, and so I made a couple of trips down there. Well, after I had, they wanted me to keep coming back, so I did. And naturally, people that go to a beautiful country like that are always going to want to stay. And I started looking for a little place I could buy, especially one where I could fish. And after a few years, I found a place and bought it. I still have it today. All of Ocean Springs was just open to the kids to hang around, But we'd go up to the community center. There's always something that somebody had going on weekends. They had a jukebox up there. And well, when I was about 11 years old, my dad, at that time he was in the Coast Guard, and he got a duty station in Florida, Carabel, Florida. And me and my mom and my little sister rode down there on the train to meet him. Back in those days, the trains were steam. And the engine made that black smoke flying up, Of course, the cars weren't air conditioned. You had to ride with the windows open, and that black smoke would be coming. That was about a 15-hour trip down there. Well, if you remember, there was another community center over on Iberville Drive.
Was it by Marble Springs?
Precisely. That same property, that's where the old community center was, and that's where they held most of the dances and any kind of public functions, even political rallies and all over there. And it eventually became the home for the JCs and the American Legion. But the community center where it is today, when we were in high school, people didn't realize the value of those Anderson murals, and people would lean up against the walls and,
Lean up against the boys, lean up against the walls, put their
yeah,
and smoke.
yeah,
And smoke.
yeah.
And smoke.
Everybody had to smoke in those days. If you didn't smoke, you weren't cool,
Did you smoke? Did you smoke?
When I was in school, I thought it was cute, It didn't take me long to figure that out.
Interesting. So what has provided you the most satisfaction in your life?
I guess my profession, really. And because I was one of the lucky ones that did something that I really liked and enjoyed, and something that I did very well, I thought. And if you like what you do, I think you're going to do a better job at it. And I had a lot of friends that went to work at Ingalls or Keesler, and they didn't really enjoy being there all day long, every day. But I can actually say, when I'd wake up in the morning, I'd be excited about what I was getting ready to do, because I'd been thinking about it. Ever since we left the day before, I'd been thinking about what the next step was going to be. And
so what advice would you give the next generation in Ocean Springs?
I'd say the advice I'd give the next generation would be, don't let it change as rapidly as it has. Because in the past 30 years, it's changed way too fast to suit fellows like me.
What can they do to prevent that? I really want to know.
I wish I knew. I really wish I could say, but his name was Frederick Adolph Schrieber. and he was working with his father-in-law, who was his name was, I'm trying to remember my great-grandpa's first name, but I really can't, but his family name was Rupp. He was my grandmother's father. He was one of the caretakers on the Smith property. They owned quite a bit of property on the front beach, and they were down there. He and my grandfather were down there one day, and they found an old pile of bricks and stones, and they started looking through it, and they found that what is now the Abbeville Monument that declared that this was the original French settlement. That stone is in New Orleans, but I can't find out where. They won't. It was in the Cabildo. Matter of fact, I have all the original paperwork when they were corresponding with my grandfather about him to donate it to the Cabildo. And I've called them over there and said, yeah, I'd like to come look, because they've never let the public see the original. They had a replica made of it that they put on public display. But the original was considered far too valuable to put on display, so they kept it in a vault. Well, I called them and asked them if I'd bring the original paperwork showing that my grandfather had donated, would they let me look? At that time, they told me that it had been moved up to the Mint building. Well, Ray and I called over there, and they said they ain't heard about that. And for a while, there was a group of people that were really strong. They thought that they would be able to go get that stone back. And all I could say was good luck. When Margaret Miller was working with the Mary C. O'Keefe Center, after she had worked at the, didn't she work at the Mary C. for a while? But they thought they could get it back, and I'd say if they could, that'd be. But it's so secretive about those things. I don't understand why either. Yeah, not really. I just I'd like to make a comment and just say I think Ocean Springs is changing way too fast for me, and I do realize that a lot of people see Ocean Springs as an opportunity for investment and profit, and that's kind of sad.
Because it's your home.
Absolutely.